Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Gatwick South Terminal reopens in style. Hundreds of flights return and lots of optimism. But will it be enough to revive the region's aviation industry?
Helping children and young adults to deal with anxiety in their way. The parents of a teenager from Kent using Ellie's story to help others.
There's a lot of pressures for young people these days, especially with school. There's social pressures and peer pressure.
Also tonight, adapting to life as a refugee, we catch up with the family who fled Kyiv without their cat as they set up a new home here in Sussex.
3, 2, 1.
And game on, the older generation proving video games are no longer kid stuff. Good evening. Gatwick's opened its South Terminal after almost 2 years because of COVID. But with the spiralling cost of living, rising fuel prices and fears about the virus still around, will the passengers return?
The aviation minister thinks so. On a visit there, Robert Courts told us he's confident flight prices will be kept affordable as airline and airport bosses try to bounce back from the pandemic. James Dunham is at the airport for us. James, is the industry being too optimistic though?
After everything Gatwick has been through, Sangeeta, I think the airport can be forgiven for being a little optimistic. And in fact, on paper, everything looks like it's going in the right direction. Passenger numbers are increasing. We've seen a bit of a low on the runway at the moment, but believe me, it's been the busiest here today in 2 years. And there's a real buzz about the place. That's not to say there won't be challenges further down the line. We all haven't really seen the full effects of the cost of living crisis hit us yet with increasing energy bills. But at the moment here, with the South Terminal finally reopen, there is a real positive mood. A buoyant beat at Gatwick for the aviation minister visiting the reopened South Terminal. Flights have almost doubled, but our energy bills are likely to go in the same direction, landing this industry with a problem. Can it cope if people can't afford to travel?
It always reacts to market pressures, and I'm absolutely confident it will do so this time, to enable people to get abroad, to have holidays, to reconnect with friends and families and to run their businesses.
But if families are facing an increase in bills of £700, for example, they're not going to be going away, are they, if they can't heat their homes?
Well, this is where we'll look to the industry to do what it always does, which is to make sure that it responds to market pressures to ensure that that family holiday is one that's affordable.
So this is day 2 of the South Terminal being open, and take a look around. It is busy, and quite clearly the bounce back for this airport is on, and passengers that I've been speaking to here are confident that they'll be able to go on holiday again this year despite the rising costs of living.
I do actually have another family holiday lined up, so we'll be going more towards the end of the year, but everything definitely is more costly now, so but definitely 100% go away again. After all of this, it's been a long wait, so
we just enjoy going on holiday. So yeah,
and we'll be coming back to see family.
We'll be coming back to see family as well.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do, we'll always come back.
All of us are under pressure domestically with some of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing. But all I can reflect are the passenger volumes that we're seeing coming through from the booked loads on the airlines, and it's remarkable.
By July, the airport anticipates more than 150,000 passengers a day, matching 2019. But fuel, one of the biggest airline costs, has soared, the war in Ukraine pushing up prices.
I would say possibly the prices will increase.
Low-cost carrier Wizz Air doesn't want to charge more and shouldn't need to at the moment, having managed to secure several months' worth of fuel at a cheaper rate.
It's very, very connected to the situation in Russia. This is an industry which is prepared for this type of situation and crisis when it comes to fuel prices, of course.
After dealing with a health crisis, this industry will now need to navigate through an economic one.
But James, how are airlines planning to manage the surge in fuel prices?
So as you heard there in my report from Wizz Air, Sangeeta, they stockpile fuel when it's at a cheaper rate to avoid surging prices when extraordinary events like wars happen, as we are seeing at the moment in Ukraine. And because of that process, which is followed by lots of airlines, there shouldn't be any additional surcharges being put on ticket prices at the moment. And to reflect the positivity here, EasyJet in the next few weeks will be scaling up their operations. 65 aircraft based here will increase to 80, and tomorrow British Airways will also launch a new short-haul route.
James at Gatwick, thank you. And the Transport Minister left Gatwick earlier to return to Parliament, and he has threatened P&O Ferries with a package of measures that will block the company's plan to replace 800 seafarers with workers paid below the minimum wage.
Well, the ferry company's chief executive has already admitted the mass sackings broke employment law. Abigail Bracken is in Dover for us this evening. Abigail, what's the government saying tonight?
The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has written to P&O Ferries giving what he calls one last chance to reverse its brazen breaking of employment law and reinstate sacked staff. This is what the Transport Minister told the Commons this afternoon.
We are continuing to review the contracts at P&O Ferries with the government, and the Insolvency Service are continuing to investigate the actions of Peter Hebblethwaite, who brazenly admitted to breaking the laws before two committees of this House last week. I am clear that P&O Ferries cannot and will not be allowed to get away with their actions. I hope the whole House will now support our efforts to do just this.
Increasing the pressure, two parliamentary committees have called on P&O Ferries to have its licence to operate in the UK to be revoked and for them to be prosecuted. Now, while the government says it will stop P&O from paying replacement staff less than the minimum wage, but unions say its staff need their jobs back, but on their previous wages. Now, P&O says that it risks going into administration if it didn't make these 800 job cuts. And this evening it's told us it welcomes the government's commitment to increasing the minimum wage for all seafarers working in British waters, saying it just wants a level playing field. But this weekend, its attempts to get its Northern Ireland route running again were stalled after its ferry was deemed unfit to sail because of failures in staff training and was detained in the port of Larne. Now, the Easter holidays are fast approaching, and it's been over a week since any P&O ferry has set sail from Dover. And so this afternoon, transport officials were meeting with rival ferry companies, trying to see if there's a way of avoiding travel disruption this Easter.
Abigail Bracken, thank you.
In other news, emergency services remain at the scene of a serious collision outside Calfold near Haywards Heath. The A272 has been closed with 4 people reported injured. Police say 3 vehicles were involved in the crash that took place just before 11:30 this morning. 2 air ambulances joined officers, paramedics and firefighters at the scene.
The trial of the man accused of the fatal stabbing of Sir David Amess has had to be adjourned for a week because of COVID. Ali Harbi Ali denies the murder of the Southend West MP at a church in Leigh-on-Sea last October. His defence was set to begin today, but 3 members of the jury at the Old Bailey have tested positive for COVID.
Like many teenagers, Ellie Foster struggled with the pressures of today's society. She was bullied and had low self-esteem. She battled with anxiety.
Well, now her family and friends are determined to build something positive from her short life, and through Ellie's Angels have launched an app to help others. From Sittingbourne, here's Tony Green.
Having lost their daughter Ellie when she was just 16, Mark and Jodie Foster have had a lot to deal with, as Ellie herself had in her short life. This memorial bench in Sittingbourne is dedicated to Ellie, but thanks to her family and friends, this is not her only legacy.
Ellie was beautifully creative, a girl who was, I'd say, wise beyond her years, very thoughtful, helpful, kind-hearted.
And like a lot of girls her age, she had her problems, she had her demons.
Yes, I mean, yeah, like a lot of children, young people, that, you know, she was struggling with anxiety.
Ellie kept a record of her struggle with anxiety and how she overcame it and reached out to help others.
Ellie spent many months being, you know, positive and radiant, and it was beautiful, beautiful transformation. But sadly, in November 2020, Ellie was hit by a car while she was jogging, and we lost her a few days later at King's College Hospital with traumatic brain injuries.
The story was never going to end there. Collaborating with local NHS and using Ellie's own social media, photos and poems, friends and family set up Ellie's Angels. Now, having secured funding, they've launched a new app. Bethany, Kareen and Hannah are among the Ellie's Angels who put it together.
The app's called Better You, and it's an app for mental health in young people and well-being. It really lets you hone in on what you're feeling anxious or feeling upset about.
There's a lot of pressures for young people these days, especially with school. There's social pressures and peer pressures.
Ellie's life ended far too soon, but her angels are making sure her story and her work goes on. Tony Green, ITV News, Sittingbourne.
Now you're watching ITV News in the South East. Still to come this Monday evening.
We report on the rise in over 50s who are apparently taking up computer gaming.
And I'll be in the studio with the news that I suspect no one wants to hear. Plunging temperatures after our fine weather and a taste of something much more like winter. I'll have all the details.
And for the very latest on all our stories, you can, of course, go online. itv.com/Meridian is the address. You can call us and you can always follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Now an update on a story we've been following for a few weeks actually. You may remember Dan Baker from Brighton, who brought his wife and stepdaughter out of Ukraine to safety in the UK, but he says that their future is far from certain. The family fled Kyiv as Russian forces closed in.
Now they're battling bureaucracy as they work out how to support themselves here as refugees. Malcolm Shaw has been to see them.
So we're going to do this today.
A home from home. Dan Baker was born here in Brighton, but since 2016 he's been living in Kyiv with his Ukrainian wife Victoria and her daughter Veronica. Now they're staying with Dan's parents in Sussex as they adapt to their new life as refugees.
It's always nice to come back to your hometown, but I don't want it under these circumstances. Everyone's been great, of course, but now I've had time to reflect. It's just how much we've left behind. Not just physically, because, you know, these physical things can be replaced, but emotionally, and, you know, we've all left our hearts in Kyiv because that's where we live, and I don't know, it's kind of quite a sad feeling.
Dan and Victoria ran a language school in Kyiv and had just renovated their flat. But when the war started, the family had to take shelter in a basement before deciding the situation had become too dangerous. Fearing for their lives, they reluctantly left Ukraine.
It's like a dream, which cannot finish. I cannot wake up. I still cannot believe that it's happened to us. From what level life we had before and what we have now, it's big difference. We disappointed, and yeah, sometimes it makes me angry.
The family drove through Ukraine and crossed the border into Poland. They flew back to Britain from Krakow.
Yeah.
Sadly, they had to leave their beloved cat Pumpkin with a Polish friend until they can work out how to bring her to the UK.
When I see videos of ginger cats on Instagram and TikTok, I'm like, oh, where's my Pumpkin? But I think that it's better because it's better so she being in the apartment where someone gonna touch her, can send videos, photos, her, and we know that everything okay with her. She stay with a really nice guy.
They have the speed trials along here. They try to do the quarter mile as fast as possible.
The family are enjoying being able to explore Brighton in safety after the dangers of war-torn Ukraine. But money is running out, their accommodation only temporary.
The sofa that you can see us sitting on is Veronica's bed. Victoria sleeps on a camp bed on the floor, and I move the table and sleep on some cushions. You know, it's not the ideal situation. Even though it's my parents' house, we feel safe. It's not good for either of us.
Finding where to live, work and study are just some of the challenges which still lie ahead for Dan, Victoria and Veronica. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Brighton.
Meanwhile, more than 1,100 Ukrainians have been matched with 700 property owners in Kent who have signed up to the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Kent County Council says it will help those arriving access schools, healthcare, benefits, English classes and translation services.
In other news, the Red Arrows are returning to Folkestone this summer. The world-famous aerobatic team will take part in the town's air display, while also performing at the Eastbourne Air Show on the same weekend in August.
And the ITV Evening News continues here with the national and international news at 6:30. With the details, here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, all the reaction to the shock Oscars moment that's divided Hollywood.
Oh, wow!
Will Smith slapping Chris Rock was the biggest talking point of a dramatic night, overshadowing his first big Oscar win.
I want to apologize to the Academy. I want to apologize to all my fellow nominees.
Also ahead, the government's plan to raise standards in England's schools, but critics say there's not enough money for it. Plus, will there be a royal rethink after William and Kate's disastrous Caribbean tour? Will you join me for those stories and more at 6:30?
Now, what springs to mind when you think of a video gaming enthusiast? A teenager or someone in their early 20s, maybe?
Basically my son. Well, it turns out that those picking up a controller and firing up their console are much more varied than you might think. New market data reveals that a quarter are actually aged 55 and over.
So are video games now a thing that reaches all age groups? Here's Nick Smith.
3, 2, 1.
When they first emerged in the late 1970s and early 80s, video games might have been seen as a niche hobby for computing experts. But as decades have gone by, they've evolved into a multi-billion-pound industry, with a firm foothold in mainstream culture. So it's not surprising that independent game shops like Level Up Games in Canterbury are finding more mature customers coming through the doors, many revisiting some memories of their youth.
We do have a lot of customers over the age of 50. We've been seeing a lot of folks reliving their original gaming times. They've grown up through the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s with the original Nintendos, Ataris from the 70s. Now they're either still playing them and still enjoying them, or they're sort of moving on to new bits and pieces.
New research suggests that the fastest growing demographic for gamers is not youngsters, but those middle-aged and older. The average age of a gamer now stands at 35, suggesting it's no longer just a pastime for teenagers and 20-somethings. A recent poll shows 46% of the gaming market is now people aged over 40, and the reach of video games is pushing towards pension age. Numbers in the 55 to 64 age bracket have jumped by a third since 2018, thanks in part to COVID lockdowns.
The people who are writing this game can play it absolutely superbly.
Terry Greer has been a gaming enthusiast since the first consoles and home computers emerged on the market in the early 1980s. He's now in his mid-60s and is a so-called legacy gamer. After a career working in the industry, he now helps students design the video games of the future. Terry says the idea of a typical gamer is much broader than people think.
Games have always appealed to a wide demographic, and as the populations got older, they've aged with it. In 2009, games like Angry Birds and Farmville really opened it up to the masses. People who'd never played a game before suddenly started playing games, and that increased the average age demographic quite hugely.
And business experts studying the gaming market tell me digital companies are finding savvy ways of appealing to nostalgia in older people to enjoy pastimes on virtual platforms.
Half of the UK population play games. In total, there are about 7 million gamers that are over 50 years old. You also have a group of people that don't play games in the past. They play board games, strategy games, and now they find that they could play games online. They can play all these traditional games online because these games have gone digital.
People who experienced gaming in early life often do keep playing long into adulthood. And there's growing evidence that those who missed out in childhood are being drawn in later life through the sheer variety of games on offer. Because when you're in a digital world, getting older just means levelling up. Nick Smith, ITV News.
All of which begs the question, are you or have you ever been a gamer?
I have been, yeah. I used to find it therapeutic, but I object to the word mature. But plenty of so-called older gamers, we're not old. getting in touch with us on social media. Let's start with Leanne Wesley from Eastbourne. Leanne says she's over 40 and has been gaming since she was a child, but says, I'm now a gaming partner with my favourite games development company. Ooh, we play Xbox and PC. Oh, this is serious stuff. And I see many more mature gamers around than youngsters. Thank you.
More mature is fine. Kaz Ellis writes, I'm the wrong side of 60, her words, not mine, and I've been playing World of Warcraft for 3 years. I saw my daughter playing and gave it a go. She says it's great fun.
Jenny Kenny from Tunbridge Wells writes, I'm 41 and spend a lot of time on my Nintendo Switch.
And Glenn Curley, who's also from Kent, posted, I've got a PS5 and I'm 55 and it keeps my brain fit, he says. Thank you very much for getting in touch with us today. Keep your comments coming. Right, let's gloss over the age thing, talk about the weather. Holly, you said temperatures are going to plummet. Please no.
Before I tell you about it, can I quickly just show you some of the lovely photos I've had in over the last few days, because it has been glorious out there. These were the blue skies over Hyde the other day. We had beautiful conditions here in Hildenborough. You can just see a little bit of medium level cloud. Again, not a cloud in the sky over Nyman's, just glorious. And of course our pollinators have loved it. Our blossom has been out. We are all in for a bit of a shock though, because so last Thursday 19 degrees. This coming Thursday, more like 7 degrees.
7?
And potentially something a bit wintry.
You know the clocks did their thing?
Yeah, so the clocks have sprung forward and the season has sprung back. We could start to see a little bit of maybe sleetiness, a bit of snow across the hills. Maybe. It's only a risk, maybe some hail. And I'm talking sort of Wednesday night, Thursday. So I really do think it's going to be quite a shock to the system compared to the sort of weather we have had. But it does remind me of the phrase, ne'er cast a clout till May be out, which is a famous phrase in the weather world, which basically means until the end of May, it might still be really cold, you might still get some snow, and don't put your winter gear away.
I was just about to say the very same thing. I put my winter coat away.
That was a mistake, Matt.
That was a mistake, wasn't it?
Well, it's easy to be fooled into this lovely weather, but a real change for this week, I'm afraid.
We're dreaming of a white Easter. No, just joking. Here's the weather. Holly Green.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Something rather different then in store for our weather as we push through this week, turning much more changeable, of course, than we've seen of late. And yes, a return to some rather colder temperatures, even the risk of something a little bit wintry later in the week as well. So if we take a look at the bigger picture, you can see this RMS at the moment initially in mild air, but it's this cold front that plunges its way across us Wednesday night and Thursday that brings that colder air of Arctic origin, and hence this real drop in our temperatures. At the moment it's quite quiet, but we are starting to see some showers moving up. Some of these could be quite lively as we head through the night, especially towards parts of the coast, I suspect. Otherwise fairly cloudy and a bit murky in places. Temperatures should stay up 7, 8, 9 degrees as we start tomorrow morning, but we do start with some low cloud, a bit of mist and murk, and some showery outbreaks of rain, which, as I say, could be quite sharp in places. Now, as the day goes on, the rain does tend to pull its way a little bit more southward, so many of us turn drier as we head through the day, although coastal areas could well keep that rain a little bit longer, and temperatures, you'll notice, already quite a bit lower than today's values. Taking a look then at our times of high water, we've got Margate at 11:09 and again at 11:24 as we push into the evening. So the outlook. Well, I think on Wednesday you may well get away with a largely dry story, but we have got that weather front moving in from the north, so we could start to see outbreaks of rain later, possibly even turning to something a little bit wintry across high ground. Then into Thursday it's a story of showers, but some of these showers could have a little bit of sleet or hail with them perhaps, and in that wind it will feel cold.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And stay with us, because next here it's the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Assuming no more singing before we go, you're done?
No more singing, I'm done. That shocks Matt a bit, didn't it?
It did a little bit. It's the first time I've experienced it.
It won't happen again.
It was a bit strange.
Special occasions.
That's it from us. Have a great evening. Bye. For now.